Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and as you're listening to this, it's been 1 month since I lost my wife, Ange, and I'm fucking broken. I mean, I spent 3 years caring for and feeling so bad for Ange while she had cancer, and now she's gone, and it's like everything has started over again. And now I feel so bad for Keaton and I. And this grief is hard to explain. While I'm holding my shit together right now, a lot of times I really can't do this. I mean, most people have gone through grief with losing someone, but when it's your partner, who you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, it's a completely different animal. I wake up, I turn on the Peloton bike, and then I see a big picture of Ange in the Peloton menu. And then I usually start crying, and that lasts throughout my ride. I punish myself by listening to Florence and the Machine, The Dog Days Are Over, because for some reason Ange put that in an Instagram video. And whenever I heard it, it just kind of really hit me emotionally. And I play that every morning when I get on the bike. And I cry through that and pretty much through the rest of my ride. And that's how I start my days. Then I try to eat. But I usually don't have an appetite for too much after my morning sadness, and then I try to work, and usually it doesn't go so well. I get lost in way too many Ange rabbit holes that I'm diving deep into, and the next thing you know, my head is so messed up that I can't get anything done. I've tried therapy, and so far I'm not feeling it. But I'm going to try it again when I get back from this vacation. And this trip, it's going to be so hard. Ange was such an important part of my side of the family, and she loved them so much, and she loved this trip so much. So much so that in one of her notebooks, she wrote that the first place that she wanted to have her ashes spread was on Rehoboth Beach in a certain spot with my whole family. So an hour ago, I went into my urn, and I took Ange, and I put her in Tupperware for the flight east. As always, I'm going to be working through the pain, and this week I have a podcast with legendary ski photographer Lee Cohen. This was the first podcast I recorded after Ange, and I don't remember it. That could be the shock of the loss I experienced or all the drinking I've been doing. But regardless, I think it turned out great. Before we get into it, I need to let the folks who are coming into town for the memorial know what the dates are and what to expect. So save the date of August 22nd through August 24th. On August 22nd, there'll be a dinner for family and close friends. That's the Marchetti Spaghetti Dinner. That's going to be at the Alki Bathhouse. Then on Saturday night, everyone, that is everyone in the Seattle area that ever met Ange, you are invited to the Admiral Benbow in West Seattle for a karaoke night for the ages. It is going to be so much fun. We encourage imbibing as much as possible and singing all the hits that Ange would love you to sing. And I have all of those on her phone, so we're going to make a big list of all the songs that Ange would hope everyone would sing at karaoke. That is going to be so much fun. And then on Sunday, after everyone's hangover goes away, will be Ange's celebration of life. And I'm working on the guest list now. If you knew Ange or you're flying into town and need to get on that Evite list for Ange's celebration of life, email us at Angapalooza25. That's ANGAPALOOZA 25. That's the number 25 at gmail.com. And I'll plug you into the guest list so we have space for you at that celebration of life. I or someone who's part of the team is going to be sending out the Evite to everyone for that celebration of life. And unfortunately, there will be no kids there. Fortunately, I think Ange would be stoked on that. But really, with all the friends and family that Ange had, we don't have room for kids, and that is quite all right. So that is going to be an incredible weekend, and it's going to be a lot of planning on my end and a whole bunch of others. But Ange had so many friends from so many different circles, and we all want to celebrate her. So I hope to see you there. I also want to thank everyone for the well wishes, the gifts of food, and the donating to the GoFundMe that we put together. All of these things are greatly appreciated and they mean a lot, so thank you. Finally, thank you for listening and telling your friends about the podcast, and most importantly, thank you for supporting my incredible sponsors. They make this show happen every week. I'm talking about Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, and Liquid Force. Now, let's chat with Lee Cohen. You grew up in New York City in the 1960s, I think, and were you in the city?
I was in Queens until 1968, and then my parents moved out to the island, like 25 miles from the city, until I was out of high school. And then it was upstate New York between Rochester and Buffalo where I went to school.
Okay, so you're in Queens for a good deal of time. And thinking about that, it was like a lot of Jamaicans and a lot of Caribbean people going there. And was that a crazy place to grow up, being like just a Jewish kid in that whole environment?
No,
Uh,
not really. Back then, it wasn't like that, I would say. I didn't remember any Caribbean people. It was pretty much seemed to just be whites and blacks, really. And if there was any people who were Latino, it was all Puerto Ricans.
okay. Were there a lot of Jews back then too?
Of course, it's New York.
Hmm.
I don't get the relevance of that at all.
I'm Jewish and I like to ask questions about that just because, you know, I grew up in a place that didn't have a ton of Jewish people, which is DC, but you grew up in a community where you probably knew a ton of Jewish people.
Well, like when I was a little kid, I don't even know. Like, I don't even remember any of the people. I've moved in fourth grade. I have a better memory of where I grew up in my middle school and high school. And then for sure, there was a lot of people, all different Puerto Ricans, blacks, and white people. Yeah, there were a lot of Jewish people there too. I don't get the relevance of this having to do with skiing
It
now.
doesn't, but I'm going to spin it into the relevance of skiing. So, skiing's a place that doesn't have that many Jewish people. How many Jewish people have you worked with in the ski industry, other than me on this podcast and maybe Klaus Obermeyer?
I know tons of them. Like, it's hard for me to think of them individually, but half of the people who come here from New York City or, metropolitan New York, LA, all over the place. Like a lot of big urban areas have people who are Jewish in them. And New York City is the most of anywhere. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of people I know out here
Who's the
who are
best Jewish
Jewish.
skier
But
then? The best, most talented Jewish skier you've ever seen?
my kid,
Okay, there we go. He's got your genes, so that's even more power to you.
of course. But he's the only pro skier I can think of off the top of my head immediately.
There's Anna Siegel as well, and I think there's a couple other people, but that's all we need to talk about with Judaism. Your roots started in New York City. Your dad was a big skier. And did he get you into skiing early and often?
Well, my dad wasn't really a big skier, but like he always used to say to me that he was never a good skier because he turned with his shoulders, right? But he did introduce me to skiing, when I was 5 years old. But I never took a lesson in my life until I came here. And one time, me and my buddies on a big pow day took a lesson to cut line. Like I was already probably almost 30 years old.
Right.
So I didn't a lot of ski brats, they have instruction race, they go to racing just like it is now, like, kids in the ski community. And my kid, they grew up hanging out with skiers, but I didn't have that. I had a friend of mine, his dad owned a bakery and was from Europe. And he would take his kids out of school every Monday and go to Hunter. And I would get to go with them sometimes. I had another friend whose dad had a place in Stratton, and I got to go with them a couple times. And then, like in eighth grade, I got to go to Europe with my friend whose dad owned the bakery, and we went to Austria and skied Kitzbühel, Kaprun, and Delancey. I remember it was like some kind of weird package deal with Scandinavian Airlines, right? And it was like less than $400 for the whole trip, including everything. And the plane was like 6 hours late taking off from Kennedy. We stopped in Iceland. We landed. I don't remember where we landed. I think we landed in Germany because we went to go see some relatives of theirs. But it was a cool trip. Like I got off piste skiing on that trip. But my dad had me skiing when I was 5, and he would take me a little bit. We went to Vermont now and then. My dad took me skiing. It was pretty cool. I loved it. I always had some like idyllic notion of being a ski bum.
It sounded like you were super into it for a long time, and then you ended up screwing your knee up in a time where they didn't know how to fix knees, and you had to kind of stay out of skiing for a little bit. What happened to you?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a bad knee, like they call it recurrent subluxation of the patella. It's like some weird thing where you could swing your knee at a joint. I
Okay.
would do it and it would gross people out. I remember I would do it on purpose.
I've seen little
And
people do that at a party.
girls thought it was really gross, like, like seeing it just like pop out of the joint, but it didn't really hurt me. But then my second year in college, I got tackled in a pickup football game and I ended up having surgery. This was 1977, and they took out all of my lateral meniscus in my left knee. And that was just what they did back then. And that basically sentenced me to getting a knee replacement, which I didn't get for another 38 years,
Well,
even though docs were kind of like looking at my knee like later on and being like, Jesus, how do you go skiing? So then I went skiing like after that surgery. That happened around Thanksgiving time. And we went to Kissing Bridge, this mogul mountain outside of Buffalo. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm taking off after this winter and I'm going skiing. I'm going out west and becoming a skier.
You got your
And
health back and then you changed your whole outlook on life?
yeah, I mean, I didn't think like my health was bad, but I had just had knee surgery. And all of a sudden I was like jonesing to go skiing. And then I remembered sixth grade, my friend whose dad had a house at Stratton. His dad took him to Aspen and he came home with a map of Aspen Highlands. And I remember him just telling me it snowed every night and was bluebird skies every day. And it just sounded like the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, it was just unbelievable sounding. And it just sat in my mind. I remember the map of Aspen Highlands was really weird. It looked like a nose of a mountain,
Mhm.
kind of like a diamond shape. And this was before they had, by the time I got to Aspen, probably 15 years later, 12 years later, they had added some of the terrain over there. It was kind of on the east side. Shit, I can't remember what it was called, but then later on they added Highlands Bowl after that. And I haven't been back to Aspen since 1983. I'm itching to go there. I meet people, I know people from Aspen, and I just haven't been back skiing there.
So you saw that trail map, you got all excited, and when you tell your folks you've done school for 2 years, and you let them know that, hey, my knee feels good, I want to be a ski bum for a little while, but I've already done 2 years of college, what do they have to say to that?
Nothing. Like I was kind of like running my own program completely. Then I went to North Carolina for a couple of months after the semester was over. And then I hitchhiked out to Yellowstone. I got a job. I met a dude out there and an older couple out there that we all were working together. We worked at a couple places in Yellowstone. Then we went to Denver. And me and my buddy, like this guy who I buddied up with in Yellowstone, he knew one of my childhood friends from going to Southampton College, coincidentally. He was from Connecticut. And then we went into a ski shop in Denver and asked the old guy in there, he was a European guy, where we should get our pass. And he said, A Basin, Keystone, because they were together at the time.
Okay.
So we got a midweek pass at A Basin, Keystone for $100. And then we camped out most of the winter and became ski bums. This was like, being a true ski bum.
Well, before you become a true ski bum, because you said a bunch of stuff there. One of them was that you hitchhiked from North Carolina to Yellowstone. And thinking about that, that means you probably hitchhiked a shit ton in your life if you wasn't probably just that one road trip. And are you hitchhiking cross country by yourself? And what's the craziest thing you've ever experienced hitchhiking?
Oh, I don't know. Like, at one point, all right, so it took me about 3 days to hitchhike from High Point, North Carolina to Roosevelt Lodge in Yellowstone where I was working. I got picked up by two dudes that they were going to Cheyenne. They were kind of cowboy dudes. In Cheyenne, they drove into a field like at the back of a high school, and I think they were going to kick my ass, but they ended up not doing it. It's like I think they were maybe thinking of rolling me. And I got picked up by a couple of gay dudes now and then, like it would happen periodically. I've gotten picked up hitchhiking by people who pulled a gun on me. Like I hitchhiked back and forth the country a bunch of times when I was older, but mostly I got picked up by dudes who had been hitchhiking in World War II and would hitchhike home on their leave. And they were the guys who would pick you up because they could relate to hitchhiking. Like I never got in like a super gnarly situation where anything really bad happened. Like there were some awkward moments now and then. I think the closest to me ever get my ass kicked was those two dudes drove out to that high school field, and I think they were thinking of doing it, and somehow we were having a conversation, and nothing ended up happening.
So you get yourself out to Yellowstone, and when you get there, given we're going to talk about you being the total ultimate ski bum, like I've had a lot of ski bums on the podcast, none that lived like you did, I don't believe. But in terms of how you lived at Yellowstone, was it like total dirtbag climbing lifestyle there, or what were you doing there?
No, there's not really a lot of climbing in the Yellowstone. We were maids cleaning cabins at a log cabin camp called Roosevelt Lodge. It's the most rustic accommodations in the park, and then later on we were at the Lake Yellowstone Hotel, and that was after everything else closed, like after Labor Day, and the park was almost empty. And we just cleaned up stuff, did odd jobs. We buddied up with that older couple I mentioned before, and looking back on it all, I think that he was on the lam. and he had a VW van, and that was the first time we drove to Jackson, and he took us to Dornan's, and they had the swinging barbecue there, and he took us on the Moose Wilson Road, and he knew like all kinds of freaking people. In some way, he was like a heavy hitter in some bizarre ways, but looking back later on, I thought that he might have been running from the law.
Pretty interesting story, and it's cool that he took you around and stuff like that. And so you end up going to Colorado from Yellowstone, and you said you got your pass at A Basin. But the crazy thing about your ski bummery is, like, you live in snow caves and places like that. I mean, how desolate did it get for you? Was it like living off the fat of the land?
Well, we didn't know shit, really. Like, we had a snow cave up the back lot of A Basin across the street, and we were only there for like, I don't know, probably 10 days. And one day I came sauntering out in the morning over the snowbank, and I was met by the ski area manager, a guy named John Reveal, and he had another guy with him. And it turned out, this is really funny because like 35 years later, I realized that I knew that other guy has been at Alta for a long time, and I knew him for many years, but I never connected the dots that he was the guy with the mountain manager that day when I came out of the snow cave. I only figured it out because he said something to my kid one day about, yeah, I met your dad when he came walking out of a snow cave. And my kid was like, God, I never knew whether to believe him about that story that he lived in a snow cave or not.
So, 10 days in a snow cave, and how long were you actually living outside, not paying rent and being a ski bum? And are there other people doing that with you, or is it just you?
No, it was just me and my buddy Orson. My buddy I met up in Yellowstone. It was just me and him the whole winter. At one point, we kind of went back. We hitchhiked part of the way back east and got a ride part of the way. And he got his international scout, and we drove back out to A Basin. And then we finished the winter in Taos. But we road tripped to a bunch of places. We liked Steamboat. We took a hankering to Steamboat because we drove over to Steamboat one time, and I had a Buick LeSabre with posse traction, a 1970 Buick LeSabre. And it was super dented up and stuff. Like my dad had given it to me. It was like sitting in the garage at my mom's house, just collecting dust. And, I went back in October before the winter after Yellowstone. I hitchhiked back to New York, got it, and drove the thing out west. And that's what we used for a while. But then in February, we took a few days and went back east, and he got his Scout. And then we had that Scout for the rest of the winter. And my car ended up going to the junkyard.
What did you guys do for money?
It was cheap. We lived cheap. We had worked at a hotel in Denver for a couple months when we first got there, and we lived on almost nothing. Like our season pass was $100. I had this Eddie Bauer tent. Eddie Bauer used to be the mega expedition outfitter.
Yes.
And I still have the fucking carcass of this tent in my garage. Okay, like I lent it to somebody once on a river trip, and they didn't weigh it down on sandstone, and it got blown across the sandstone at Westwater, and got tooled up pretty hard. But it was mostly the fly that got completely trashed, and I still have the tent downstairs. It was a really burly tent at the time, 1978, right? This is the winter of 78, 79, and we camped in that tent, and we'd wake up, and there would be frost on the tent. Like it would be coming off us as we're moving around in the tent. And we had two different campsites besides that snow cave deal. And we were at the campsites by far more. One was off of Swan Mountain Road between Dillon and Frisco. And the other was at the spot Blue Ridge Campground north of Silverthorne.
Okay.
Where we dug out a parking spot, and we'd go there at the end of the day and camp there. And Silverthorne, now I don't know if you've been there or not, but I've been there a couple of times driving through, and it's like a big like outlet store town.
Yeah.
But back then it was nothing but a freaking corrugated steel truck stop. It was there was nothing. It wasn't even a real truck stop. It was just like, a gas station, a couple of things. It was nothing. Absolutely nothing. You turned off of Route 9 to go north on 70, and there was nothing there. So we liked Steamboat. We drove around. That's when I first came out here. The older dude we lived with, him and his wife, like for a while.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be setting us up with tickets to see the Dead closing of Winterland, right?
That's sick.
It ended up not panning out. It's kind of a long story in itself, but that was with one of my college roommates flew out to go do that with me. And that was when I first came to Alta and Snowbird, and we went and camped out at Snowbird. I dug a hole next to the creek at Entry 1, and we pitched my tent there, and we camped out at Snowbird for like 10 days, and it was 15 below zero at night, January 1979. And my friend was kind of a beater skier, But that was my first time skiing at Alta and snowbird. It was magical. It was freaking magical. Like I'd been really like perfected my powder skiing technique. A Basin, it was the first year at Palavicini lift that year at A Basin,
Okay.
78, 79. So that was some steep skiing. I remember I had a Dynamic VR-17s, the black ones with the little yellow type
Yep.
lettering on it, and learning how to ski powder. It was cool.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Liquid Force. And not only are they back supporting the podcast, but this summer, they're bringing back the most important party and event in wakeboarding. That's right, Bro Stock is back, and the contest features the best riders in the world. But you know what's more fun than watching the pros ride? Riding with them. And you can ride with the Liquid Force pros like Daniel Grant, Claudia Pagini, and Gunther Oka at a local lake or cable park near you at their Ride with the Pro Tour. And while Liquid Force is doing all these great things to build community on the water, they're also on the forefront of product innovation. And if you're a foil frother, you're going to want to check out the new FuseLock foil system. Wake surfers are going to love the all-new Ace and Synchro offerings. And the 2025 line features fresh boards, rad graphics, and more comp vest colorways than ever before. Park to boat to foil, Liquid Force has gear for every rider type, whether it's boat, cable, foil, or surf. To find out more about the events and the products, head on over to liquidforce.com. And when you see something you like, put it in your cart, and when you check out, enter the code POWELL15, that's all caps with no spaces, and you will save 15% off your order. Liquid Force, feel the pull. Next up, it's Elan Skis. And Elan doesn't need to support this podcast in the summertime. I've said that every summer. But they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. But if you haven't noticed, while they've always been big in Europe, Elan has built a growing cult following here in the States. It all started with the still thriving ripstick revolution that made skiing easier and more fun for anyone that tried them. That same idea, easier and more fun, is what they delivered to their Playmaker series of twin tips. How does Elan deliver a better ski experience? Well, it's all about using the best materials known to man. And that's no joke. This is the same Elan that's known for building award-winning luxury yachts. So they never cut corners. And the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Seriously, if you pick one up and you look at the edges and you see those seams of glue on all the different skis, look at Elan's and you're going to see a seamless pairing because they do take that additional time to pay that attention to detail, and it's awesome. And it makes everyone feel like they're making pro-level turns. And that's what skiing is all about, that feeling. So remember, before you buy your next pair of skis, demo a pair of Elan's. Or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick a pair, and elevate your skiing experience. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, managing my family, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. That's where Best Day comes in. These days, if I'm not partying, I'm still having beers, and those beers are from the award-winning Best Day Brewery. And there are a lot of NA beers out there right now, but none taste as good as Best Day. I love the hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, and everyone seems to like the Electro Lime Cerveza. I could go on and on as they have so many flavors, and I love them all. The beauty of Best Day is that they average about 60 calories and they won't get you in trouble. And pro tip, if you're partying, try to mix in a Best Day for every alcoholic beverage you have, and it will extend your night. It does it for me, and it keeps me from doing anything stupid. To have your best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com. If you make that order over $50, we'll also throw in free shipping. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. You mentioned that dead show that I think you saw, but it was in a different story that we don't have to tell that whole story. But speaking of you and who you were at that time, you're a skier first and foremost, but then are you a deadhead as well? Are you going to a bunch of different shows and traveling and seeing them and smoking weed and hallucinogenics and all that shit as well?
I was on tour with the Dead. Like I went to a lot of shows. That was kind of like early on. We didn't get into that show, but I went to a lot of Dead shows starting like 77, 76.
Did you go into the shows or were you in the parking lot selling stuff or what was your whole setup at the Dead show?
No, we just went to shows.
Okay.
We just went to, and hung out. It was good. My roommate, like I had one of my roommates in college, the dude was a super he hated the Dead.
Okay.
Right? And it was really funny because he was roommates with this one guy And then because me and that other guy were like kind of like the dead and we're getting up in the morning early all the time, he switched roommates.
Okay.
And then he got stuck with this dude who was 22 years old. And then he hated on that guy. He just hated on him because he wore wool all the time. And he used to like berate the guy and he was super rude to him. But the guy who was really rude to the older dude, it was kind of funny that he opted out of being roommates and screwed himself. And then he became an incredible deadhead and moved to Palo Alto and was working there and like became an unbelievable deadhead. Like went to probably like, more shows. Like some people, I've been to a lot of dead shows, but there are people who've been to so many more.
Yeah, I mean, have you been to like 100 dead shows, you think?
I've been to more than 100 dead shows.
Okay.
But I quit going to the dead around 1990. Like it wasn't the same for me anymore. And the scene was bugging me and I was done.
So you were ski bumming it in Colorado. You had gone out to the last show at Winterland. I don't think you got in, like we said. And then it sounds like you kind of go back to finish up college. And it's like, what made you decide to finish college when you had the ski bum thing going and you'd found Alta?
Well, because I didn't have a job, right? Because I was just a total ski bum. I was a kid from back east. I was kind of sold on the whole myth that you should go to college, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose if I had really been on the ball, like my old man wouldn't send me to Boulder, UC Boulder. I had asked him if I could go to college there, and he was like, "Go get some grades or something, and talk to me about it."
Right.
So I went to the State University of New York. It was $500 a semester. And when it came time for me, when I was done that winter, I really didn't have anything else to do. Like my buddy was going back east, so we ended up finishing up our winter in Taos in late March. We camped out in Taos at one of those lower Hondo or upper Hondo campgrounds.
Okay.
And then we drove to Cape Hatteras in his Scout. He had this little Scout with a 4-banger. I remember when like it slid into a dump truck, or a dump truck slid into it, going down the ramp to some hotel in Frisco one day when we were going to do something to find somebody. He was shattered. My buddy George was shattered that his Scout was his baby, and it had, it caved the side of it in, but it wasn't like it could still drive and everything. So we ended up in Taos, which was incredible. Like Taos, I've always had some weird tingling up my spine. It's happening to me right now. I'm talking about Taos. I have loved on Taos my whole life. I've been there several times. I've never gotten to ski like a super deep blower day. I got to do one story on the place once. I think it was in 2012. I love Taos. What a magical place. I swear to God, I'm getting like freaking rushes right now, like talking about the place.
No, that's awesome. I mean, what other places, when you think about it, you've been to a lot of places, although Alta's been your home and what you kind of swear by. But are there other places that give you tingles like that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm talking like it's the only place that ever gave me tingles. Like, I don't know why I didn't end up there, because it does that to me. And maybe I should have heard whatever, but it just doesn't snow there like it does here. And like I don't remember how I first heard about the Alta powder thing, but I remember reading about blue martinis, Ernie Blake's blue martinis under the trees at Taos when I was a little kid in ski magazines. And it didn't seem like Alta was really on the map. And, Snowbird didn't open until the 70s, till 71, 72, I think. When I first was skiing Alta, you had to enter a drawing to get a ski pass there.
What's that all about? Like, if you don't get...
Well, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not. That's how it used to be. I don't remember what year they discontinued that, but I had to come back out to Alta to enter the drawing. After that winter, I was a ski bum and went back to school. I had to go back out to Alta to sign up for the drawing. So once again, I caught a ride from some friends partway out. They were going to Yellowstone, and then I hitchhiked down to Alta and signed up for the lottery. And then I hitchhiked over to Red Rocks to go see the Dead. And that would have been August 79. And then I remember I met this dude named Moon on the ramp in Park City as we were heading to go to Red Rocks. He didn't have shoes on, and we were going to go to Red Rocks, and we started hitching there together. And a cop like threw us off the highway in Evanston, Wyoming, and said he basically said, "Well, boys, I don't want to see you here if I come back, and you can do it either way you want. I've done it both. If I see you here, I'm going to arrest you." And so then he left, and we got a ride immediately, thankfully. And then we went to Red Rocks, and then I saw that guy at dead shows, California dead shows over the few years after that, but I never saw him, and I haven't seen him in forever. I mean, that was a long time ago now. Grateful Dead life.
Yeah, but it's such a small world, and it's so cool how you were able to reconnect with someone like that you met just at Red Rocks without shoes, almost get arrested, then see him 4 years later. That's kind of like what that whole scene created, because it was everybody coming back to the same place. The 81-82 season, I don't think you're shooting photos yet. And when you think about it, is that like the best time of your life? Like you have no responsibility, you have a degree to fall back on, and like you have home bases in Utah. I think you had one in Palisades, and you were just traveling and skiing everywhere.
So I finished up school, but I had that season pass to Alta, right?
Yeah.
So I would come out, you'd get 6 weeks off, and I would come out and ski a bunch. And I had a buddy of mine, my oldest friend, like to this day, he was living in Jackson. I would come out to Alta and stay at the Snowpine Lodge, and it was $30 a night, including food.
Yeah.
And they would put you in these like Spartan bunks, dorm room with 4 Spartan beds, 2 bunk beds, but there would be nobody else in it. And this would be like after Christmas or something. And I was going to Jackson and like hanging out with my buddy there, and he was all tapped into locals. So I'd have locals showing me around. It was a pretty cool ski bum life. So I didn't finish school till 81, right? And then the day I graduated college was December 81, because I was a little bit like behind.
Yep.
And then I just drove straight to Alta. And I remember I had to find a place to live the very first day, because I had a friend coming the next day to hang with me. And I moved into a trailer park with a guy who was a high school lineman coach at a high school called Judge here in Salt Lake. And he wasn't like us at all, but he was totally cool to us. And my buddy showed up the next day and we went skiing.
Is that the season though where you had like the place in Palisades, or you had like a share there and you guys hit like 25?
The next year, in 82, 83, I wasn't hanging in Salt Lake in the summer right away. It took a couple years until the winter of 83, 84, or 80, or maybe even after that, 84, 85 was when I started being here year round.
Okay.
Maybe it was even 85, 86, but I would go back to California and hang. So in the winter of 82, 83, which was another huge winter, like 81, 82, 82, 83, and 83, 84 at the time ranked 1, 2, and 4 for snowfall totals ever in Utah.
Like people who moved out those years never moved.
Well, I've always found that people who move to Alta, the people who become lifers are the ones who move there on a big banner year.
Yeah.
And then they're just like kind of screwed for life because they can't stop. They're just like got mad cow disease, really, right?
Yeah, totally.
So in 82, 83, my buddies, like, I was hanging in Cal in the summer, and we got in on a house in like above, like in Tahoe City, in this place called Talmont. We had like a house. We were in with these engineers from the East Bay and stuff. It only cost us $300 each to be in on this house for the whole winter. And nobody ever came to use it. Like, I don't know how many people were in on it, but we could pretty much hang there. So I skied Squaw Valley a lot that winter and Alpine. And then we road tripped. My oldest buddy from when I was a kid, I always wanted to have him, well, not my oldest buddy I mentioned before, but my other oldest buddy who lived across the street from him. Like this was like my buddy I palled around with a lot, like at the end of high school, and we were like derelicts together.
Okay.
But I convinced him to come out for the winter, 82, 83, and we road tripped a lot. Like we spent a lot of time skiing in Utah, but we road tripped. We took him to 22 different ski areas that winter.
Damn, that's
and
crazy.
Just road tripped around. It was incredible. And I thought he would maybe end up staying for life. Then the next winter, we were in Utah the whole winter, and he stayed that next winter, 83, 84, which was a record-breaking winter, really. Still my best ski bum winter I ever had. And then he bailed back to New York. He went back to New York for good.
Well, you picked up a camera, I think, in like the 82, 83 season, and it wasn't really maybe as serious as it started to become. But that 83, 84 season, that December was like one of the most ridiculous Decembers on record. And for you, was it like you're getting these powder photos then that you don't even know until you get back from getting them developed and all that? But then you realize that you've got shots that have never been seen before by skiers?
Well, yeah, I was just shooting my friends, though. Pro skiers didn't even exist. There was like Pro Mogul Tour and, and then like freestyle stuff. But I didn't get anything published that winter. I still have the letter I got back from Neil at Powder. It's kind of like, yeah, I don't think these photos cut it. I sent him a small submission. I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, but I knew that magazines, that's how you broke into the ski industry. And Powder was by far the coolest magazine Like when I was still in school and coming out west to go skiing, I had become friends with this guy, One Eye Dave, they called him because he had a glass eye. He was at the ski shop in Brockport, the town where I went to school.
Okay.
And me and him would go through Powder magazine, and he would live vicariously through, like, like me telling him what it was like when I came back.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it would be super cool. Like one time in Jackson, there was a writer for Powder magazine called Dan McKay. He was like the guy I liked the most of the writers. And one time I was in Jackson in the old cafeteria. It had these like lunchroom tables, like they fold up, like to seat a bunch of kids at.
Yep.
This was when the tram tower building, it was a decrepit, like, building, that thing there.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't like all fancy or anything. It was just old school, super old school. And it's nuking out unbelievably. I'm in the cafeteria. There's only like 6 or 10 people in there or something. I'm sitting there eating lunch with this guy. I start talking to him. It turns out to be Dan McKay,
Huh.
the dude I worship as a writer. And I was just like freaking stupefied. It was so cool. And then I met a Jackson patroller who took me out of bounds, like skiing in a closed area in a big dump day. And it was just a super cool exposure to skiing out west. I mean, like it was Jackson or Alta, really. And then in the end, I just ended up coming here.
And by 83, 84, I mean, you're no seasoned photographer by any means, but you're starting to get a lot of good photos of your buddies. They're not getting published yet. But when do you figure out the submission process, and when do you get your first photo published?
Well, the first photo I got published, I remember the first 2 photos I got published really well. Well, one, I was driving across 50 in Nevada,
Okay.
and I saw a sealed mine. It was a rusty iron door, right? And it had the word powder etched into it. And it was really super visible. I took a picture of it. That was the first picture I got in powder. The second picture I got in powder was Emily Coombs, okay?
Yeah.
This was before she knew Doug, or before she was married to him by years. I was just out there shooting. I had my camera, and she was skiing down like a pitch in Alta. And I turned around just as she was wiping out and shot a picture of her. And Powder put it in the back of the magazine with the word ignominy. And I thought she was going to punch me out when it got published. She's kind of gnarly. And I don't even really know her like at all. But that was the second picture I got published. She windmilled. You know how you windmill sometimes?
Yeah, yeah.
And she like she kind of rotated her body and windmilled, and I just happened to be looking and picked up my camera at that moment. That was the second picture I got published.
And with a photo like that, I'm sure you have no idea what you get until it comes back from being developed. And for you, from like 1984 to 2006, I think you were still shooting in film. So in the early days, was it almost like a huge event when you would get that slide film back and you're almost nervous to see if all the money you spent was even worth it?
Well, you know what? Well, it used to be an economic factor for sure. Like photographers would like go by the wayside because of wasting money on film. And nowadays everything is so expensive and people don't seem to have any issues. But yeah, we would be soaked because we'd think, oh wow, we just got the shot. That was sick. We crushed it. Or really good day. We knew we had some really good bangers, and I would rally down to the lab, and then I'd be back down there in the morning unless we were still shooting or something. But we'd be chomping at the bit to go get the film and get back to the house and have the light table out, and the boys would come over and we'd be looking at the film on the light table, and we'd be frothing like maniacs for it. It was so different than it is now, where you can just chimp and look at your photo like 5 seconds later.
I mean, yeah, and this is like a year or two before autofocus. So with you not being like a classically trained photographer, did you miss a lot of the shots, or was a lot of stuff blurry in the beginning just because you didn't have that game-changing autofocus feature?
Well, I would say autofocus was the biggest game changer for me in ski photography.
More important than digital? Like more game-changing?
Definitely.
Okay.
And so the Nikon F4, well, Canon got autofocus first. Okay. They had a jump. And I remember like some photographers switched, like Chris Noble switched to Canon. I'm trying to think of who else might have that I remember. I was sticking with Nikon. I couldn't really afford to get a whole new kit. And the Nikon F4 had autofocus, but it wasn't really that good. Then the Nikon F5 had autofocus that kicked ass, and that was a humongous game changer. I'm trying to think of when that came out. I think it would have been like 97 or 98.
Okay, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to look it up, actually. But that was a huge game changer for me. 96 is when the Nikon F5 came out.
Okay.
I got it in 96 or 97. But I remember my big breakthrough year in photography was 1995.
Okay.
So it was before autofocus. And I started working, there started being some kind of like pro skier scene, really. Like they were even before then, but like, Gordy,
Yeah,
Gordy
Pfeiffer.
Pfeiffer, like I had been working with him for a few years. He showed up from Michigan here. He was a young kid. He was like 18, and he kind of smoked the doors off of all the local hotshots in the town races.
Okay.
He was like a top 20 US high school racer. And he just crushed. And we'd work together, and we'd go out and shoot pictures. And then Spencer Wheatley was another guy. And then Anthony Dixon, a friend of mine from Snowbird, Vance Shaw. He moved up to Vancouver. He only did the ski thing for a little bit. Dixon only did it for a little bit. Like, people got frustrated trying to make it. Like, there's a lot of like guys who think they're like really as good as the dudes who are getting the recognition. And they're not, but somehow nobody like listens to them, and so they're kind of spinning their wheels. But Spencer Wheatley was another buddy of mine who I shot, and he did make it kind of as a skier. He won the Valdez Extreme. He was working for Dean, putting on the Valdez Extremes. I'm not sure what year it was. It might have been 1990.
Okay.
And he was working for Dean, helping with the event. And then Dean told him he should enter, and he won the event, and he won the World Extremes.
That's great.
And then all of a sudden, he was on the radar, and he was like a Solomon skier, like for a long, long time. I'm trying to think of who else. Like Evan Dillon was a bartender at the Alta Lodge. I was shooting him in 95. Jim Jack, you knew Jim Jack, probably, right?
Yeah, I did.
Jim
I
Jack,
didn't know him well,
I was shooting him in 95. And it was a cool thing about Alta that I always loved was that they didn't have to be like super recognized pro skiers, because it's Powell, and a lot of people can rip Powell, and that was sort of a really cool thing, is that I could cultivate a scene with like dudes I would recruit to shoot, and they were all really good powder skiers, and it was working out for everybody. It was a lot of fun.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start things out with Outdoor Research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build their products to perform in the wet and soggy cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class. While OR has always been known for building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, skiers, and snowboarders, they've gone all in on an award-winning bike line that FreeHub describes as Outdoor Research has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional but also stylish and durable. That meticulous design and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. So high praise, and Outdoor Research is doing a lot of things on the athlete side. While they launched with an incredible team, they had the Van Steenbergen brothers, Georgia Astley. This year, they've added Casey Brown, Carson Storch, and others. And between the athletes and the events they support, while OR might be new to the bike world, they've always lived it, and there's not many brands doing what OR is doing in the world of bike. To see the new products and what the hype is all about, head on over to OutdoorResearch.com. My final sponsor is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. Think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone at Stanley. And between the unique colors and the collaborations that Stanley's doing, there really is something for everyone in the Stanley line. And they're not going to gouge you with crazy prices. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you and me with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my code. To use it, head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and buy a ton of stuff because, like I said, this code is 30% off. It's the best deal that Stanley offers. And when you check out, enter the code capital P-O-W-E-L-L. That's Powell 2025. So no spaces in between that. Capital P-O-W-E-L-L 2025. That's where you get your code. Thank you very much for the support, Stanley. They make the best gear in the world. You've seen them everywhere. And if you don't have one, you definitely need one. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. The beauty of your photography, it's all that powder skiing. I mean, some of the locations are done over and over again, and where some photographers would be criticized for going back to the same place, your shots are just trying to get the powder shot even better. And it's almost like you've been pigeonholed into one type of photo. Does it feel like that for you, that you are the powder photographer and you can only shoot in Utah?
Well, I think that because I kind of created that pigeonhole for myself by just like shooting all pow shots all the time. I mean, like I got air shots. I
Yeah.
got good air shots of Dave McReynolds goes huge. I got tons of shots of Pierre sending it, but it wasn't like my raison or anything. Like it was more my whole thing was about capturing the experience that I was experiencing. Like skiing powder. Like I love skiing on a storm day. The sunny day I'm shooting. Once in a while I'm shooting on a storm day too. Nowadays, like it's such a frenzy. Like everybody, ski areas all have staff photographers and they're out every day and they're shooting on every storm day. I used to shoot on a storm day because it was something different.
Yeah.
But that's when I get my skiing in. On the really pristine sunny pow days, I'm working for sure. And like, I might get some turns in, but I'm mostly slaving for the camera on those days.
I mean, was it pretty much you and Markowitz at that point in Utah in the early days?
Yeah, pretty much. Scott was at Snowbird and I was at Alta. And then I cultivated a really good scene. Like Ano, the boss at Alta, like we kind of developed early ups basically. I don't know if it was happening at Snowbird at the same time. Like I would hear, that they were doing a different thing at Snowbird. But Scott ruled the ski photo world though.
Yeah, for sure.
He did. And I was always kind of like I always felt like I was trying to break in. And he's the man. Had all the contracts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the contracts and stuff, did you ever work on retainer for people, or were you always just going out there individually, getting the powder shots and then selling them?
No, I would have jobs, and I would work. I had like some good clients over the years,
Okay.
but you know, a lot of ski photography used to be done on spec, and like maybe if you were going to AK, you would like call up and try to talk to the athletes' sponsors so you could have a commitment early to help pay for your heli time if you were going with MSP or TGR. Then everything changed. Then like I haven't done that for years. For years. I used to like I would go to Alaska or Europe. Like it was really good. Like I feel like I had the heyday of ski photography and when magazines were in their heyday and assignment photography was really cool. And I think people still procure assignments and get sent to extravagant places on the dole. But we had it going like with magazine articles in Switzerland and France and getting sent over there and getting flown first class by tourism. And it was freaking incredible. And our skiers, I would work with Rob Story a lot. And me and him, we were living the dream for sure.
What's your most lavish trip that you were like, holy shit, I didn't realize it was going to be like this, but it is?
Well, that's definitely going heli skiing in Alaska for free and not even shooting.
Oh, not even
Well,
shooting.
one of my friends takes me.
Okay.
But it's like work trips you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just any of those trips to Europe, because that was just like unbelievable. Like, tourism lines you out. And well, my favorite trips were going ski touring and staying in different places. Like we had some trips for like almost 3 weeks where, one night we're in a super fancy hotel. The next night we're in a hut that is a winter room hut that there's no people there because it's too early before touring season. Then we stayed at somebody's house that we know. Then we're back in a hut. Then we're at Gary Bigham's house in Monrock, staying there, just like cooling around. Like those are the best trips. It did kind of suck because we wouldn't be able to stay out late because we had to show up to get our reservation, because tourism had arranged all our stuff.
Yeah.
And you got to be there at this time or by the end of such and such a time or this day. So we couldn't like wing it as much as possible. I might have been able to get some better, like good light shots, late early shots or something. But it was really good stuff. It was super fun.
Well, that's the lavish stuff. But thinking about you come from the ultimate dirtbag history. We didn't talk about it too much, but like you were the ultimate ski bum early on. In 78, there's no ski bums in a parking lot, but you living in a cave. And there might have been a couple others here and there, but you're one of the early on people like that. And then you kind of graduate into this photography world, and eventually you're submitting photos and making money. When is the first time you don't have to work a side job and your photos actually paid your bills?
I'd say that 95 season afterwards.
Okay.
I would work construction in the summer, but I wouldn't work a job in the winter, though. I would just like hang out and go skiing. And then on the days when I would shoot, I would shoot.
Okay. So,
Like, well, a couple of times I had like working at a restaurant a day a week or 2 days a week or something, like at night.
okay. And I can throw in another Jewish line here, which I know you don't like me saying, but you don't hear of too many Jewish construction workers. They usually own the construction company, but I'm going to go somewhere else with that. in the peak days of being a photographer, when there's 20 magazines out there and you're submitting to every single magazine and you're hopefully getting a lot of photos published. I mean, are there months where you have 40 photos in all the magazines combined and you're really raking in some cash?
I liked editorial photography because I just kind of got sick of dealing with, like, I don't think I've ever made like a really ton of money. Like the European magazines, I wasn't really like that keen on because they would stiff you or pay hardly anything. So I had a couple of experiences like that. And it got to the point where I was just dealing with like, a handful of magazines. But like I was doing pretty good. And then I had some big jobs. Like I had a really good run with, Patagonia for a while. Columbia Sportswear was probably the best job I ever had for about 10 years. I had a really good run with them. Like I would have a winter job and a summer job, and it wouldn't all have to be skiing by any means. And I would shoot all kinds of different shit. And, I kind of ended up kind of sort of letting it go. And it was probably a stupid move. I'm not like a really good businessman.
But you're an
But
art guy and a photo guy, and those usually don't translate into the best businessmen. But you've been able to be successful for so long that you're able to do it. And yeah, maybe you could have made 30% more, but it doesn't seem like that matters that much. When I think about like your life and times, and it's all about Alta, that's what everybody kind of thinks of you and ties you to. Can you describe what makes that place different and special compared to pretty much every other place but Taos to you in the US?
yeah, it just snows so much. Like, all right, so let's say last winter, for example, it had a really terrible start for 3 weeks. Then we had about a 6 week period, mid-February to the first week of April, 7 weeks. It was snowing so much. It was just like when it's game on, like, you hear about the horrible crowds or whatever. We don't have that many crowds. A 15-minute lift line at Alta is huge.
Okay.
There might be a gigantic line in the morning on a gigantic snow day when the road is a giant shit show, where the road was closed and you got a bazillion people coming up and the mountain doesn't open on time because there was so much snow and patrol is having to open late. So you might have a gigantic lift line at the bottom right there, but after 2 or 3 laps, it filters out and it's just a super cool place. Like it's a small ski area, really. It has 2,000 vert only, but it skis way bigger than that because it has really good long runs. And like Michel Boudry one time said, like we were skiing with him, he was visiting, and he was like, "This place is really nice for a little ski area," And
Yeah.
I don't know if he was trying to be insulting or not, because to Whistler or something, it's a tiny little place, but Alta's a really special place, and you can go out of bounds from there and you always have been able to before anybody ever even heard of the term side country. We were going into the back country there, and it's just super cool. Like you get sucked into this vibe. Like even though it can be busy and overrun, and of course it's more crowded than ever as Salt Lake grows, and you have Icon Pass and Epic Pass and all that kind of. Well, Epic Pass doesn't come down to, but Mountain Collective.
Yep.
We got more people there than ever, but on a really nasty, snowy day, you're skiing on chairs, you're skiing onto columns and spinning laps to your heart's content. And you forget about everything that was bugging you about the place, like in a second.
And I would say 10% of my audience who will listen to this will be like, fuck that place. They don't allow snowboarders. While I really don't care. What's your thought process on it? Where I'm sure, you don't discriminate against people ever in your lifetime, but at the mountain, it's the one place where people still can be discriminated against for what they do.
Yeah, if the Baldy chutes are open and the hike from Snowbird is open up West Baldy, you can snowboard at Alta. You just can't ride the lifts. But it just doesn't happen that much. And I think, some people at Alta have arrogant attitudes towards snowboarders, but I don't mind snowboarders at all. It's interesting though, because like when I go over to the Bird, because I love Snowbird, it's incredible too.
Yep.
I'm not used to being around snowboarders, so sometimes when somebody's backside is turned to you and you're skiing down fall line and they're arcing a big turn and they're kind of coming close to you, I get a little nervous because I'm not used to it as much, but I can handle it, no sweat.
Yeah. In thinking of the best skiers that you've been around, because you've been around so much talent in your entire life. And when you think about the most talented, like who have you witnessed with your own eyes where you're like, wow, that guy is just levels better than everybody else? Or are there any like that?
A bunch of them at top tier, like Gordy was incredible. Like Jamie Pierre was incredible. Like people used to say Pierre was a hucker and not a great skier. He was one of the best skiers ever. He was so fluid. Like he was like up in Alaska one time, this mountain Emmerich, right outside of Haines.
Mhm.
He wanted to ski it, and like I connected Pierre with Zach and Reggie. Okay,
Okay.
and he became really good friends with them, and he wanted to ski this line on Emmerich, and even Reggie was like, Jamie, you can't, no, it's not a good idea. And Pierre greased it. He finally convinced him to let him try it. He was such a good skier. All these guys were just like incredible skiers. Eric Roner, remember that guy?
Yeah.
Rubberneck. He was a great skier. He was one of the few guys I would say his hands were always in the, and his weight was always in the greatest position for photos. Like a lot of people, like you work with people's strengths kind of as a photographer.
Sure.
Like I know my skiers and I know what I want to get them doing. In Rubberneck, you wouldn't have to worry about it because the guy was like always in perfect form. McReynolds is great. McReynolds like skis like a surfer. He was a surfer and he was a beautiful skier and sent humongous airs. My friend Spencer, I mentioned before, really beautiful skier, grew up racing. My kid Sammo, like, he works super hard to make it as a skier and he's a beast. He's a really strong skier. He skis like super technical lines and super powerful. Marcus Caston, super powerful skier. Like if I walked into I'd have to walk into my computer right now and just, open my hard drive to remember some of them.
I'm just asking more if there is that like Travis Rice level of guy that is like 3 times better than everybody else almost. And if you had that one person that was like, holy shit, everybody here on the A list is here, and this guy's like on another level.
Yeah, they're all so great. Maybe I'm just kind of like having a little brain fart right now.
It's all good. I got another question about skiers. Who is the best ski actor? You talked about Roner and his hands always being in the right position, so we won't include this in this one, but getting the photo and knowing where to make the turn and stuff is very important, and not everyone can do it correctly. Who is the best of the best that you know you're always going to get the shot with?
You know what? Every person I've mentioned is money for the shot. Yeah, maybe at this point in my life, I might have worked with my kid more than anybody,
Yeah.
but I don't get to shoot him that much anymore. He's always off doing his stuff all over the place.
Right.
But like his percentage of returns, like I get a lot of shots of Sam. Like he really hits pay dirt for me. But everybody I mentioned, like the biggest thing, and like sometimes you run into somebody that you think they're going to be a good person to work with, and it's kind of like you're talking to the wall. You're just not jiving. Communication is the whole thing, and if they understand and you understand each other, you kind of get in a groove and shit gets done. And that's definitely the essence of it all, like having the communication where they understand what I'm thinking about or talking about, and I understand what they're talking about.
All right, and I guess no one understands that better than you and Sammo combined, and that kind of lines up perfectly where we are in the podcast because I have something that I call Inappropriate Questions, and that's where I get someone that they can come up with 3 questions and they can be anything, and it leads you to a great fun story or something embarrassing or whatever. I ask people not to create an enemy by asking these questions, but to put you on the spot. And I usually record the person asking the question and then I play them back to you. But this time I wasn't able to do that because Sammo is the guy that's answering the questions or asking the questions. And Sammo is somewhere on a remote location where I've had trouble getting a hold of him, but he was able to finally get me the questions and make it happen in the nick of time. So I appreciate that, Sammo. I have 3 questions from him. I'm going to read the first one. Are you ready from question number 1 from Sammo?
I'm ready.
All right. What is the shoulder? And why do you feel people pigeonhole you into being the guy that shoots the shoulder?
Well, okay, I would say what the shoulder is a spot at Alta. It's the shot, like where early ups at Alta revolves around. At the top of Wildcat Chair, and it gets early light, it gets the deepest snow. It's unbelievable for POW shots. I have crushed it on the shoulder. I pioneered it as a photo spot. I mean, like, Alf Engen and those guys were shooting it back in the day too, but not like as a working thing. And when we started getting early ups all the time, like I got a cover shot in 95 of Lee Rickard, smoke jumper friend of mine from Alta, one of the Yipe brothers. They were called the Yipes.
Okay.
And Mike Scott is still around. Lee is down in San Diego, I think now. But I've just crushed it so hard on the shoulder that I'm associated with the shoulder to a point where there's like people out there who don't even know me who like bust my balls about the shoulder as if they think that's the only place I've ever shot a freaking ski photo. And I've had like people at the trade show smugly talking to me about it and like hinting at it, like, oh yeah, you've never shot anywhere else. And the funny thing about the shoulder is that everybody goes there if they can. I've seen every photographer who ever bitched about the shoulder goes there if they can. And I just happen to be the one who kind of pioneered it and made it into a routine for myself and try to get there and, make it my business because it delivers the goods for me time and time again. So, I mean, I go shoot at the shoulder for like an hour or an hour and a half or 45 minutes, and then I go out of bounds or go somewhere else. Typically, I would usually go out of bounds afterwards because then I want to get away from the masses.
Right.
And that's where we're going to get on track POW. Yeah, so I got a little bit of it's a kind of a little bit of a peeve for me that people have an attitude towards the shoulder or towards me about the shoulder. And, they kind of roll it into one. And, I've had guys like say stuff to me, but they're too chicken to like really say it point blank.
Yep.
So I just kind of laugh about it.
All right. Well, that is question number 1 from Sammo. Question number 2 is the Alta backcountry holds such classic spots for shooting POW shots. Have you had any blowouts with other photographers poaching your shots? If so, tell a story of the most major blowout.
I've never had a blowout with anybody poaching my shots.
All right.
I have had moments where I have shown up at a hit that I shoot on, and an upcoming photographer left because he knew it was my spot out of bounds, and which I couldn't even believe it. Yeah, I've never had a blowout. I remember one time Markowitz had 7 people back at Rocky Point. I remember one time Flip McCrearick, when he was a photo editor of Freeze, said, if I see any more photos from Rocky Point, I'm going to throw them in the garbage.
Okay.
People are still going to Rocky Point and crushing it. And that was 20 years ago, he said that, at least. It's a tiny little zone right outside of Alta, but I've never really had it out with a photographer over anything.
All right, well, that's good to hear. Your final inappropriate question. Let's hear a real take on the over-delivery of content and the under-delivery of payment for photos from magazines and brands looking to take a mile when giving an inch. How does modern photography with social media water down the old-school mentality and ethics of photography?
Oh, well, it's just a whole different era. It's a whole different ballgame. What I like to say is that photography, photos, they're like devalued currency. Because, all right, a lot of the audience doesn't know the difference between a good photo and a bad photo, even people who are supposed to, right? Like a lot of people on social media, not like pro photographers or anything, but they love anything they see. It could be like, a shitty photo or something dumb. I don't know. There's a whole different side of photography than a hardcore professional photography, but it has also opened up some avenues also in some ways. But, it has been the death of print magazines, really. There are hardly any left, but the ones that remain are really good. They can't afford to pay a lot of money. They never could, really, So you're not getting rich off of editorial photography, but you make a little money. I'm not going to get into like who pays what or anything like that, but some pay more than others.
Sure.
And in the end, some of the good magazines out there that aren't paying are putting out really beautiful magazines. And I mean, for me, I have so many freaking photos that are awesome. I might as well let them get used. And if magazines is the place, I'm not going to give them away to nothing to a brand that is making millions and millions of dollars.
Sure.
And then not all companies respect photographers and treat them the way they should. They're trying to take advantage of photographers and they're squeezing them. And then the fact that people undercut and stuff like that is something you got to contend with.
Yeah.
But the day rate for photography hasn't changed since I started shooting for good clients. And yeah, maybe it has gone up somewhat in the last few years, but it was like $1,500 a day. It was a lot of money for a long time.
Yeah, that's what when I was doing it, or when I was a marketer, that's kind of what we paid our photographers, I feel like. But then we put them on retainer because we know we could get 30 days for a lot less.
Yeah, and the deals that I like to make, like I don't like to go out and shoot for somebody like, oh, we're going to schedule this shoot for December 27th. We'll have the people there. Like I encourage them to let me take the bull by the horns and let me line it out for the day that's going to get the best photos.
Yeah.
And then maybe I don't get as much work like that, but I can cherry pick the days and they won't have all the photos looking like they came from the same day. And it's really in the best interest of everybody. And as long as they're not trying to hose me, it's a good deal for me too. And I mean, I'll try not to do it if I don't think it's a good deal, but like I still kind of I probably like burn myself a little bit, but I just like working that way. I want to go, I want to shoot when I'm going to get quality stuff. I want to have their athletes to shoot. And I think it just works out really good for everyone in the end like that.
All right. Well, that is Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And with this one, your story is so interesting because, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I don't think I've had a bigger ski bum on the podcast, but you were only a ski bum for like a small window, maybe 10 years. And then you ended up with like the best job in skiing, being known for shooting the deepest powder shots in the history of the sport out of Utah. And you live where the lightest snow in the world is, and you get to get a lot of powder days yourself. And being a ski bum, being able to ski a ton of POW days, that's kind of the dream, and you've made the dream a reality. I thank you for sharing your story, and I thank you for your time.
Mike, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Oh, you know what? Full circle, buddy. I look forward to just being a ski bum again.
So that was time with Lee Cohen, and what a life he's lived. From ski bum to one of the best powder photographers to ever live. And along the way, he's followed the dead, he's traveled the world, he's had a pro skier kid, and from the sounds of it, he's looking forward to getting back to that ski bum lifestyle that he had way back 30 years ago. Not too bad for a Jewish kid from New York. That's the podcast, and I'm about to record my next episode, and then I'm out of town for vacation. If you're anywhere near Rehoboth Beach, shoot me a message and let's grab a beer. If you're not, well, grab a beer somewhere else and cheers, Ange. She would like that. Actually, she probably wouldn't care, but regardless, thank you for listening. Thank you for reviewing me wherever you listen. And finally, please support the incredible brands that make this podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, and Liquid Force. Have a great week, everyone.